Hello there everyone, I hope you had an enjoyable Christmas. Now I'm here to take you through my choices from the Criterion collection for 2023, and I'm not doing a top 10. Instead, I'd like to choose my 10 favourite releases right across the year, and I'll begin with January and go through to December. Now it could include a director's film set, despite that set containing more than one title. So let's see how this all pans out. But before I start, I thought you might be interested in looking at some statistics I've gathered across the year. So let's look at the US for starters. Not including directors' multi-film sets, we saw 36 new titles joining the collection. 28 4K UHDs and 17 of those were upgrades from Blu-ray or DVD. Now we had 9 directors' multi-film sets also joining the collection this year. And it's interesting to note here that there was a high amount of US collection titles which were also 4K releases. Now some collectors invariably have already purchased these and have them in their collection. In fact, exactly 28 of the 56 overall releases this year, that's well over 50%, were 4K. Now let's see if this continues next year as well, as many collectors may have ended up double dipping. I know I certainly did on a few. Now the UK didn't fare quite as well as the US this year. We only saw 19 new titles arriving in the UK collection, and of course some of these had already been released in the US collection. There was a break in the summertime in the UK as well, while we switched over distributors from Sony to Spirit Entertainment, and since then we've seen 4 4K releases since October, which is really encouraging. So, we started January with the arrival of Terry Gilliam's The Adventures of Baron Munchausen on 4K, Imitation of Life, Lars von Trier's 3-film set, the Europe trilogy, This Is Not a Burial, It's a Resurrection, and Bergman Island. Now all of these are very good titles, but none of them actually made it to my 10 favourites list. My first choice for the list is from February, and it's directed by Robert Townsend, and it's called Hollywood Shuffle. Now this film caught me somewhat by surprise. With his cheeky take on Hollywood and its inherent hypocrisy, it never took itself seriously anyway through its 81-minute running time, and it was represented through a series of interspersed vignettes and fantasies. Produced, directed and co-written by Robert Townsend himself, the film is semi-autobiographical, and it reflects Townsend's experience as a black actor. Townsend appears in the daydreaming vignettes as Jasper, the butler in Black Acting School, Speed, the film critic in Sneaking Into the Movies, Samius, the private investigator in Death of a Breakdancer, and Rambro, the black Rambo-like war hero in Bobby's dream about winning an Oscar. Anne-Marie Johnson is Lydia, Bobby's girlfriend, and she remains supportive even as he begins to question his career choice. She also appears in the Black Acting School segment as the runaway slave Willie May, and as a hooker in the Sneaking Into the Movies clip of Attack of the Street Pimps. I absolutely loved Attack of the Street Pimps. They were sort of zombies attacking the hookers. Absolutely hilarious. Now this film should have had more tension. It also featured a young Keenan Ivory Wayans as Donald, Bobby's co-worker at Winky Dinky Dog. He discourages Bobby from acting and thinks that Bobby will not make it into Hollywood. Wayans also plays Jerry Curl in the vignette Death of a Breakdancer. Hollywood Shuffle is spine 1173. Other highlights from the month of February included Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet and the 4K release of the Krzysztof Kieslowski 3 Colours trilogy. Soon, of course, was followed by a Curzon release here in the UK, also on 4K. Chilly Scenes of Winter is my next choice. It's from March, and it gets my favourite vote for that month. It's a film directed by Joan Micklin Silver, based on the Ann Beattie best-selling novel, and it's about lovelorn civil servant Charles, played by John Hurt, and his married but separated co-worker Laura, played by Mary Beth Hurt. Months after their affair has ended, Charles is haunted by memories as he desperately attempts to rekindle a love that perhaps never was, and switching deftly between the past and the present, Micklin Silver guides his piercing deconstruction of male wish fulfillment fantasy beyond standard movie romance into something a bit more complicated and cuttingly truthful. Charles Richardson, that's John Hurd, is a civil servant in his early 30s, and he works in the Department of Development in Salt Lake City. And he's an impetuous romantic. And one day he meets Laura Connolly, played by Mary Beth Hurt, in the filing department of his office. And of course, it's love at first sight. The film also features Griffin Dunne. He was the film's producer, and BT is the author who loved Silver's script and gave the producers an option for her book with the proviso that they gave her a bit part in the movie. And indeed, she was cast as a diner waitress and paid $26 for the privilege. Now, it's a good time to watch the film, certainly now, as it's the winter season. Although Silver had more box office success with Crossing Delancey, I prefer this film personally. Chilly Scenes of Winter is Spine 1176. Other notable mentions from that month, of course, were John Woo's Last Hurrah for Chivalry and David Lynch's Inland Empire. And, of course, Mildred Pierce got its 4K upgrade that month. Now, my next two favourites hit the collection in the same month, and that's April. The first is the highly successful Steve McQueen anthology of 5 films made for television called Small Axe. Now, I particularly like this, and it maybe is because I live in the UK and perhaps can identify with this more than our US friends. But I would certainly single out Mangrove in the set. That was set in London, a black man who's trying to get his local community restaurant off the ground, and he's persecuted by the police with overt racial prejudice, which was the overarching theme in this collection. Now, the neighbourhood rallies in support of the Mangrove, and a march is organised to protest police conduct. The police surround the protesters and provoke violence, and a number of protesters are immediately brought up on minor charges of affray. They were famously known as the Mangrove Nine in the subsequent court appearance, and that of course has gone down in legal history as a significant legal moment. And Lovers Rock in the set was a delightful look at youth as they get together to simply dance and enjoy music and each other's company. Lovers Rock was the name of a musical genre popular in the mid-1970s in London, but its influences were transatlantic, as were its reaches. The film is named after the genre and plays some of the most popular songs throughout the movie, such as the very famous hit of the time, Silly Games, by Janet Kay. The genre which coupled the heavy reggae bass lines popular in Jamaican music and the soft soul vocal harmonies originating in Chicago and Philadelphia's R&B scene, forging unique spaces of freedom common in young black people of the time whose families were immigrants. Aided by the sensuous cinematography provided by Shabir Kirchner, McQueen captures an exhilarating expression of black joy in a society often intent on stifling it. And I loved the way Steve McQueen just let the song Silly Games play out and observe the actors' reactions to it. Very much a feeling of being in the room with them, shot of course through soft and warm filters. And then there's the third in the anthology, Red, White and Blue, and that's a young black constable played by John Boyega as Leroy Logan, an officer in the London Metropolitan Police who founded the Black Police Association and attempted to reform them from within. John Boyega was awarded Best Actor BAFTA the following year. Racism was fairly prevalent, especially in the Metropolitan Police Force in London in the 1970s, and Leroy Logan encounters this head-on from his colleagues as well as opposition from his family at his choice of career. But instead of enduring it, he refuses to be intimidated by it and tackles it directly and ends up founding the Black Police Association, heralding the way to permanent change in the way black officers were treated in the London police. It's based on a true story, and its nuanced exploration of Margaret Thatcher-era racial tensions powerfully portrays the psychic struggle of a lone man going up against a system designed only to crush him. There's 2 other films in the set. They're Alex Wheatle and Education. And there's also an excellent documentary on the Notting Hill fire. Small Axe is a great set. And from April, we also got the release of the Palme d'Or winning comedy drama from Ruben Östlund, and that was Triangle of Sadness. Now, this got mixed reactions, but I absolutely love this film. It's a film in 3 parts. A young man and his girlfriend, who's a social media influencer, win a place on a luxury liner cruise and witness social class division, as passengers are all the indulgent rich. In the middle section of the film, there's a luxury meal and a raging storm, and that results in hilarious chaos. Woody Harrelson is in there as well. He's a liner captain, and he's usually totally inebriated. Following an unexpected disaster, some of the passengers find themselves stranded, and a Lord of the Flies sort of class system forms, and that's led by the former cleaner on the ship, Abigail, played by Dolly de Leon. Only the strong will survive. Now, Triangle of Sadness is in fact the area of the face mentioned in the opening section of the film, and Östlund shows us that society's obvious class layers are still apparent, and there's an obvious imbalance there which switches when circumstances change inalterably. And another upgrade to 4K that month was Terry Gilliam's The Fisher King and Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal. Now, from the month of May, I choose the excellent Targets. It's the first film from Peter Bogdanovich. Roger Corman had been owed some film time by Boris Karloff, and he persuaded him to work with a relatively new and young director to put in the time and fulfill his commitments to him. Bogdanovich, in this film from 1968, put Boris Karloff in as a character playing himself in the part of an old Hollywood actor who was showing his latest and not very accomplished film work in a drive-in movie theatre. But as we see unfolding earlier in the film, there's 2 characters and they would intersect. One of them is a young assassin, and he's made him his target towards the end of his killing spree. Now, Bogdanovich got to act with the great man and also broke completely new ground in the process. Although the film was not successful at the box office, it launched his career, and of course, he went on to direct some great American films in the 70s, one of which I'll mention later. Another notable title released, of course, that month was Celine Sciamma's Petite Maman, and of course, the superb 4K of Thelma and Louise. Certainly the first, and hopefully it's not the last, Ridley Scott film to come into the collection, and it's one of the most commercial titles this year. And also we had Seishun Suzuki's Branded to Kill getting a well-earned 4K upgrade. Now we come to June, and in this month I was a bit spoilt for choice. We had Renoir's Rules of the Game getting its 4K upgrade, Joseph Losey's The Servant, and Terry Gilliam again with Time Bandits also getting a 4K release this year in Criterion, as well as Barry Jenkins' first film, Medicine for Melancholy, with the month rounding off Pier Paolo Pasolini, of course, the Pasolini 101 set. Not without its issues, I say, though. Just try getting those discs out to play them. I was actually worried at one point I was going to tear the disc pockets. So in the end, because I was torn between most of those releases, I just couldn't bring myself to choose a favourite for that month. So I decided to switch over to July. And the month began with Cheryl Dunye's Watermelon Woman, a groundbreaking feature and vibrant representation of black lesbian identity. And we also had the brilliant 7-film set from Randolph Scott from his collaboration with Joe Brown called The Renowned Westerns, all in 4K UHD. Again, I devoted an entire edition to this set alone. And we also saw the excellent Carl Franklin film One False Move, getting its debut in the collection in 4K UHD. Now, my choice for this month was easy, as it was talked about incessantly leading up to its release, and it finally arrived in the collection that month, and it's Martin Scorsese's After Hours. The fact it even came to the collection at all was great, but the real bonus was that it was also a 4K. The film stars Griffin Dunne, Terry Garr, John Hurd once again, and Catherine O'Hara. Dunne plays an office worker going out to have a nighttime evening of fun and ends up on a wild ride involving a mad bar owner, a sculptress, a mad woman in an ice cream truck, and a whole mob of people chasing him around the neighbourhood. In true Scorsese fashion, it's fast-moving and it uses interesting camera work provided by Michael Ballhaus and a great central performance from Griffin Dunne himself. It was way ahead of its time as well. In 1985, put up against the Hollywood mainstream films of the time, largely the reason why it didn't fare well at the box office. But it doesn't detract, however, from the sheer genius shown by a man behind the camera and the director, who takes no prisoners as we are dragged along with Paul Hackett, our hero, as he tackles the dilemma and confusion of an all-night ordeal. Scorsese even got script help from the great Michael Powell, part of the filmmaking team of Powell and Pressburger. So After Hours is a great release with an informative set of additional features too, and it's Spine 1185. August brought us 4 releases: that's Akira Kurosawa's Dreams, which was visually impressive, coming to its 4K format in the collection, a series of 4 films from Swedish director Bo Widerberg, a nice addition to the collection there, the second Wayne Wang film joining the Criterion collection, Dim Sum, and of course the Colleen Smith feature, Dry Long Zone. Moving on to September, and we had a stunning 4K upgrade of Rob Reiner's The Princess Bride, a resplendent makeover for Nicholas Roeg's Walkabout, also in 4K. Orson Welles' The Trial, coming in 4K to the collection thanks to a restoration from European Studio Canal as part of their ongoing collaboration with Criterion. The 1987 biopic La Bamba. But for me, the standout was Brett Morgen's Moonage Daydream. Now, this is my personal choice, so as a massive Bowie fan, it was a shoo-in, and went into my 10. It looks at Bowie and reflects his life and career in a Technicolor splendour with great visuals and with never-before-seen footage, because Morgan had unrestricted access to Bowie's extensive personal media archive, and more importantly, he was able to feature Bowie's actual music. Packaging had a great design in a digipack format for the 4K as well, provided by Empire Design. The sound mix was a brilliant Atmos mix, and I'm lucky to have a full Atmos sound system in my home, and it took full advantage of that, which only enhanced the viewing experience for me. October was a very busy month, with 4 standard titles being released and 3 Janus Contemporary releases. Now, although I thoroughly appreciated these 3 films, EO, No Bears and The Innocent, I'm not choosing any of these. They're not technically Criterion Collection titles. They're only distributed by Criterion. Here in the UK, we got to purchase these a few months earlier through Picture House and Curzon distribution. I totally recommend all 3 of those films. And you probably realised how much I appreciated them as well, because I devoted an entire episode of Let's Talk Criterion to them. The Criterion releases for October were a 4K upgrade of Don't Look Now, using the previously available Studio Canal restoration, one I feel Criterion owed us, as it had been out of print on Blu-ray for some years. The 4K upgrade of David Cronenberg's Videodrome from 1983, I highlighted this, of course, as one of my favourites on a live stream that I did with Chris Mohan, choosing my favourite overall releases for that month. And Chris, thank you for having me as a guest. The others, with Nicole Kidman in a creepy ghost tale and a more modern horror take from Nikato Yuzu with Nanny. But the standout for October for me was the 1932 Todd Browning film Freaks, accompanied by the other films The Mystic and the Unknown, starring Lon Chaney. Now, Freaks showed real characters who had previously not been seen on screen before, including dwarfs, a limbless man, and people with other deformities and disabilities. It's a thriller, and it was set amongst the backdrop of a travelling French circus and follows a conniving trapeze artist who joins a group of carnival sideshow performers with a plan to seduce and murder a dwarf in the troupe to gain his inheritance. However, her plot proves to have dangerous consequences. An accustomed audience of the day had a real reaction, leaving the cinema being sick, and one woman apparently having a miscarriage at the horrific nature of what she was witnessing. Of course, now we can view this with more discerning eyes and take a more subjective view. I find the experience intriguing and fascinating, as well as being interesting as a story. Now, I also enjoyed doing all the research on this particular edition, and I learned so much about Todd Browning in the process. The video also reflects this in the views that it received, and I like that my channel does deep diving into not only the film itself, but the production background and the journey that the director makes to get it onto the screen, and the reaction that it gets afterwards. And I hope you enjoy watching that too. Before I move on to my final 2 films in my 10, I would just like to thank all my new subscribers for 2023 who have found this channel, and I've also made my live stream debut this year as well. And I also joined the Instagram family. So thanks to all those currently following me on Instagram. My handle's on the screen for that now, and it's also down in the comments. November saw the arrival of another 3 Janus contemporaries, and again they did not disappoint. We had Tori and Lokita, The 8 Mountains, and the amazing Godland. Other releases included, from Jackie Chan, Emergence of a Superstar, a 4K of Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets. Of course, you'll see the 4K come out again in the UK through Second Sight in January. And Second Sight have collaborated with Criterion to produce this excellent transfer and restoration, as well as joining technical forces. They split the costs, and it's all been supported by Scorsese and his longtime editor Thelma Schoonmaker, the widow of the famous filmmaker Michael Powell. There was the Blu-ray of La Cérémonie from the director Claude Chabrol, made at the twilight of his directing career. But for me, the release that I was most excited about and delighted to receive was the Peter Bogdanovich film, yes, he appears yet again, from 1971, The Last Picture Show, a story of a small Texas town called Anarene and its youth, and their coming of age, with brilliant performances from Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges, Cloris Leachman and Sybil Shepherd, and it came to 4K UHD with its sequel Texasville, and was packed with additional features. Now, of course, the UK was upset when they received the set without the sequel, and comparing the two on the screen you can see it's not listed on the front cover. The Last Picture Show was such a brave choice by its director, as he had disregarded the book that it was based on when it first came across it in a drugstore a few years before, and he decided to choose it when Sal Mineo mentioned it to him. It has a rich history as is part of the BBS story, where it first appeared. I knew a 4K restoration had already been done by Sony, as it was on the Columbia Classics Volume 3 set, so it was only a matter of time, and I know it's an upgrade and not a new title, but I was just so impressed overall with the entire package that I had to add it to my 10 favourites list for this year. So, to my final choice, and it was a closely run contest, believe me, between 2 of the new December releases. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, his Netflix film from 2022, telling the tale of the little wooden boy, and Albert Lamourisse's The Red Balloon and Other Stories. But the French charmer just pipped del Toro to the post, and that is my final choice. The Red Balloon is only 35 minutes long, and it tells the beautiful and simplistic story of a young boy who finds a red balloon which has magical qualities, as it befriends this lonely lad, played by Lamourisse's own son, Pascal. Following him around the streets of Paris, he's helped by a woman with an umbrella when it rains, and he's chased by a group of lads intent on mischief, as well as encountering a girl with a blue balloon, Lamourisse's daughter. The film's ending uplifts your spirits and completes the story. It's an example of how a short film can capture your heart and literally take it to new heights. Other films in the set were White Mane, Bim the Little Donkey, Stowaway in the Sky, and Circus Angel. And that month we also saw the 4K upgrade of Days of Heaven by Terrence Malick, and the Blu-ray of the 1961 film by Alan Barron called Blast of Silence, the story of a hitman set at New York in Christmas time. Very apt. So there we go. There's my list of my 10 choices and their spine numbers, and they'll be coming up on the screen at the end of this video. All I have to do is wish you a happy new year, and I'll be back with you in 2024, bringing you an edition on the first of a busy January roster, starting with 4K UHD upgrade of Sanjit Ray's The Apu Trilogy, coming to the collection on the 2nd of January. Until then, from me, it's goodbye, and above all, good Criterion viewing.